All right, we're joined by Walter Jones, the assistant baseball coach here at Tulane University. We're standing in the indoor hitting facility. When I say hitting offensive philosophy, what does that mean to you?
For me, it means maximizing the skill set of our players. Ultimately, the goal is to score runs. And so in order to do that, we've got guys from all over with different baseball experiences, with different baseball skills. And so ultimately we're trying to maximize that. We're going to have an offense that we're not one-dimensional. Like, we're going to have guys that hopefully can, go double-digit home runs, but also guys that can lay down bunts, guys that can steal a bag on you, guys that are instinctual baseball players. And so being able to develop all of those skills is very important as far as building our philosophy, because you want to create a philosophy of, yes, we want to be good at this, but also you can recruit to it and you can do all the things leading up to it, and then it just not be exactly that fit when guys show up. And so having the ability to adjust and to be able to maximize what you have, I think that's where coaches are able to kind of take the next step to maximize that roster.
So let me ask you, how do you train that on a day-to-day to make an offense that can win in multiple ways?
I think the only way to train it is to train it. We put guys in those situations, whether it's in here, out on the field, different BP rounds. Every day we're going to have some sort of skill work, whether it's hitting runs, hitting behind runners, driving runners in from third. We're going to have that. We're going to have some two-strike hitting every day. We're going to hit spin every day, both left-handed and right-handed. We're going to do some sort of short game as far as the bunt games, the inside games concerned. And we're going to do something base running-wise. And so, how we attack that depends on how yesterday went. And so just taking yesterday, evaluating, and being able to put together a great plan for today to continue to push this thing forward.
How important is it for you to be adaptable to what every player needs? Because in any team setting, player 1 might need X, Y, and Z, while player 20 might need something completely different. How important is it for you to be that chameleon?
It's of the utmost importance, because if we're not able to reach our players, then what we know means nothing. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a really good staff here, to where we've got a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different ways of viewing things, a lot of different ways of coming up with solutions. And so we try to do everything that we can to use those to best suit our players, whether it's an individual situation or if it's a team deal. Mm-hmm. Anytime you're trying to solve a problem, the more perspectives you have, the better you are at solving that problem.
How important is communication in your role to ensure guys, A, know where they stand in your eyes and in Coach Ullman's eyes, but also, B, to make sure they know they're on the right developmental track for what their goals are?
It's in communications of the utmost importance also. Like, we have to be able to communicate in order to, A, make sure that everything that we're trying to do is being communicated to the player correctly and properly, to where they have a grasp understanding of it. But also, when those things don't go the way that we want them to be able to make those adjustments moving forward. I think, when a player's not doing something at a high enough level, we're not going to tiptoe around it. It's going to be direct, it's going to be honest, and we're going to get down to the nuts and bolts of it and be able to make the adjustments that we need to make. And you can't have, real soft feelings when it comes to getting into that stuff. Like, you've got to be able to be a man, take accountability for those things, and be able to work towards fixing or getting better at your weaknesses. But also, it's a two-way street. If one of our players comes in and we've been working on something and he tells me there's something that he's not comfortable with, or ask me if we could try something a different way, I have to be a man, and I have to be responsible, and all those things. It works both ways. And so being able to have that open line of communication, to where, again, we can use the perspectives to be able to come up with the best solution for that individual.
You mentioned kind of your side on the communication of being the coach, and when a player says something to you. We're in an age of information. Everybody opens their phone and they can find any hitting drill, they can find any hitting coach that's talking about whatever they think of on that day, and a lot of times hitters can get consumed by that. How do you go about having that conversation of, like, I'm glad that you're so excited that you feel the need to go consume that information, but here's why we're doing this, and here's why that's for you specifically?
Yeah, and so for me, if a hitter's not completely in, then it's never going to be the right thing for them. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes you have to let guys fail a little. They go off and they try something different, and you know, you kind of got to let them go through it, have some failure, and then they come back and it's like, hey, here's kind of where I'm at with it. And you're direct, you're honest, you're upfront, and you know, either they agree with you or they don't. If they don't agree with you, then maybe they're just not ready. Maybe there needs to be more failure. Maybe there needs to be more time in here. We're working on the things that, you know, I could see bringing value to the player that he can't quite see, to where maybe, you know, we have a voila moment to where he's able to have a breakthrough there. But there's a lot out there. You know, I fall victim to it. I'm laying in bed every night and I'm watching hitting videos. I'm sending them to Coach Hodge, and he's sending those things to me, and Coach Iz is firing them over. And so there's a lot out there. And so to me, the best way to handle those things isn't to go, hey, that's not right. What we're doing is right. That's not it. It's for me to be as knowledgeable as I can about everything so that I can best, or so that we can best apply it to our team and to our players individually.
Players in this environment, in this day and age, it feels like a lot of times there is that instant gratification that they want to see, and it's usually tied to performance during weekend series and playing every day as a true freshman or in those scenarios. How do you go about balancing and making sure a kid understands that, like, the developmental track isn't always immediate, and you have to believe in the process and you have to believe in the day-to-day, and being able to get them focused on what's important now?
So there's two things, in my opinion. The first one being, hey, baseball's hard, and it's important that we're upfront with guys with that, and we make sure that they understand that. Baseball is difficult. We're never going to try to make it any harder than it already is. It's difficult. And then the second thing is defining success. You know, success for one guy might be different than success for another. And so, you know, especially with the younger guys, did I swing at good pitches? You know, did I take my best swing? Was my approach right? Like, strip the results away from it, and let's make sure that our process is correct. And then we've got a better chance of being successful, but also we're repeating things that ultimately lead to ultimate success, you know, overall. And so we're trying to, you know, simplify the process to where because it's so hard that if you just go, if I get a hit, that's the only way I can be successful. Like, that's impossible. It's impossible. And so redefining that for those guys to allow them to have something that's more attainable, and to where they can walk through those doors on the way out of these doors and feel a little better about themselves every day.
A lot of times young guys are the best player on their high school team, dominate their competition, bat 700 in even some scenarios. How do you get them to understand that failure is a part of college baseball and the adjustments?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things they have to see for themselves. That's what the fall's for. You know, we have good freshmen in our program right now. If you go and ask any of them, has it been easy? Yeah, they're all going to tell you no. And so you have to live it. You know, you have to live it and go through it, and that's the only way to grow from it. Is to be in those moments or be in those situations, and it be hard, difficult, and then the value is finding a way to come out of the other side. That's where the true value of this whole experience, that's where the true value lies.
Let me ask you one last question. If I just came across the field, opening days in a couple weeks, what do you want the offense here at Tulane to be defined by somebody who maybe has never seen the program play? What are things you want them to embody on a day-to-day basis?
I want to play physical. I would love for us to be relentless and to be consistent. If we can do those things and continue to stack days on top of each other, I think we've got a chance to reach where we want to be. But it's, you know, those things have to show up every day. And then I guess another one is, you know, I want to be a team that finds ways to win baseball games, ultimately, because that's hard to do and it looks different. And so the ability to be able to adjust within the game to maximize the day, to find a way to go 1-0, that's important.
All right, we are now joined by Brian Hodge, the assistant baseball coach here at Tulane University. We're standing in front of a pitching machine and a cool little setup that you have in the indoor. How important are challenging environments to preparing guys to perform when it matters most?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about challenging environments is just exposing the guys to what they maybe aren't getting exposed to when they're home or or doing their tee work or their field work. And when you get exposed, then you know what's going to fill the gaps once we get into the game situation, right? And so the pitchers nowadays are really good. They got just as much technology, maybe even a little more than what we have. And so the hitting side is really starting to catch up. And what we want to do is make sure that that gap feels just like the game, right? That challenging environment is identical and sometimes even more challenging. Like we try to create an atmosphere to where the game almost slows down for them in a lot of aspects. And I think you can do that through pitch shapes and spin rates, but you can also do it through, intensifying the atmosphere around the players and creating little competitions or stadium noise or whatever it is. There's a lot of ways to do it and people can get creative with it, but anything you can do to slow the game down for the players is critical. And again, once they're coming back to the program, then they realize, oh, this isn't going to work for me at this level, especially when you're talking about the high school kid or the JUCO kid coming in that hasn't been in your program yet.
How do you create buy-in for guys? Because hitters, obviously, they want to see themselves barrel baseball. They want to see balls fly over the batter's eye and do all those things that make them confident and prepared to face a really tough pitcher. But how do you get guys to understand that, like, that's great and there's a balance in there, but we really need to train at a game-like speed to make sure you're prepared accordingly?
Yeah, you said it. Balance, I think, is the biggest part of that, because if you're 100% challenged and no, feel, the hitters are going to start to spiral out of control and think nothing's working for them, right? But if you can create an environment where, today's a challenge day, today's a field day, I think you start to get that balance of that challenge environment is starting to help me when it gets to the field day, right? And I need that field day to know that I can still hit the baseball at a high rate and hit it hard, right? But I also need that challenge to say, am I ready for game? Because at the end of the day, confidence in game comes from knowing that you've done it a million times at a high rate, right? And I think defining success is also a big deal, right? Like if we have a guy that's super high spin with some carry in here today, their success rate is probably going to be 1 or 2 out of 5, right? But then when you get into game and the guy's not as high spin, he doesn't have as much carry, well, now their success rate's like 3 out of 5. And if you tell a hitter, hey man, if you go 3 for 5 every game, you're a pretty good hitter, and obviously that's not the direct correlation to what's going to happen in game, but you got to define success for each hitter and say, hey guys, ahead of your round today, know that 1 for 5, 2 for 5, that's going to be your success today. We just got to avoid the 0 for 5, or we got to avoid the same mistake 5 times in a row, right? And as long as you define somewhere in there, this is what a good day is going to look like and what a bad day is going to look like, they can walk out of a cage and say, I had a good day, I checked that box and got better at X, Y, or Z.
How important is player-led leadership of some older guys being able to say, hey, when I was your age or I just got started in the program, I looked worse, right? And being able to get them to understand that, this can be you down the road, but you have to buy in and see why it's valuable to you.
Yeah, well, when you have coaches, like here we have 3 coaches that are kind of offensive-minded guys, right, and that are constantly feeding in. And a lot of times the cool thing about being on the staff is we all kind of have the same message going towards the offensive group. However, sometimes you got to fill that gap, right? And players fill that gap better because they're in it every day, right? And each guy has his own set of experiences that he can bring to the table. And a lot of times they recognize, hey, I was you last year. When coach told me this, I kind of got it, but this is what really got me going. And they can connect those dots for those guys. So when you have guys that, number one, care enough to watch other guys' rounds and pay attention to what they're struggling with, and then want to bring them up with them, if you get the right group of guys, they want everyone to elevate. They don't want to just say, as long as I'm doing my part and I'm good, I don't want anyone to beat my spot. When they recognize that the team, the low man on the totem pole has to be high, as soon as you start raising that floor and they all want to do it together, that stuff really goes a long ways. And the freshmen feel, or the newcomers feel, like everyone wants to be good here. We want to win. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, is the winners want to bring everyone, elevate everyone, and they'll connect the dots however they need to.
Real quick, before we get into a little bit of the base running stuff, which I know you do a ton on, what are some examples of some environments that you put guys into maybe on a weekly basis? These are the cores of, we want to see velo spin, whatever it is, on a weekly basis before we prepare for a game on Friday.
Yeah, so stuff's always the first thing that we attack. So it's plus spin. We'll cover sinker slider, right, with extra horizontal movement. We'll cover carry break so that you're seeing all the shapes that we potentially could see in game. We'll even mess around with arm slots and go extreme with arm slots, right? And we'll get the guy, we'll get the tall machine out, or we'll drop it down to the ground for the sidearm guy. And you can create so many environments, but it just takes a staff willing to be open-minded, forward-thinking, right? And so once you get that, there's kind of no limitations to that environment, right? And then, you know, like I said earlier, you can pump in crowd noise. Competition is like the greatest tool, because in game, essentially at the end of the day, it's a competition, right? I got to beat your guy, and he's trying to beat me. So that amps up your heart rate, that amps up your mind. You got to guys have to find a way to slow down, slow their heart rate, and still get a job done and win the one-on-one battle despite all that outside noise going around. So we're just trying to quiet the internal environment for them, whether that's breathing or visualization or just, again, many reps inside that chaotic environment. Now all of a sudden they get to the game, you're like, man, I've done this a time or two, and I've had success at it. I know I'm going to get the job done here.
When we mentioned base running, what does the philosophy look like? Obviously, the goal is to score more runs than your opponent, and base running is a huge piece of that. So when I mention base running in Tulane Baseball, what does that look like?
Yeah, you kind of mentioned it, like good base running teams help the hitter in the box, and the hitter in the box is trying to help the base runner have an easier job, right? We're trying to work together to beat that guy in the mound, and the more chaotic we can make his environment, then it's going to make his life a lot more difficult. What we want to do as an offense is give the defense, we want to command the game. We want to control it. We don't want them to say, you're going to work off of us. We're going to dictate what they do to us. We want them constantly saying, what are they going to do? They're going to fake steal, or are they going to double steal? Or if the ball is even, you know, if the ball is going downward, or they're already 3 steps into their break and they're standing up at second base, the more they're thinking about the run game, the more fastballs we're going to get, the more elevated pitches we're going to get, and it makes the hitter's job really easy. And everyone would rather hit with the runner at third, less than 2, than a runner at first with less than 2, right? So it just creates an easier environment for everybody, and it's more fun. Like when once players buy into that base running culture, they realize how fun it is. You're not going station to station and, hey, let's go one bag and then stop. Like baseball becomes fun, and they're constantly looking for what's next out there, you know, and now the game becomes exciting for them, and they can't wait to get out there and show up a team.
Base running a lot of times is about aggressiveness, right? And a lot of it really is instinctual for the player itself. You can be a third base coach and you can send a guy occasionally, but them going first to third on a 50-50 read is up to them. How do you train that on a daily basis so that those guys trust it when it comes game time?
Yeah, so first you got to establish a culture of aggression, right? And with that, they have to have the confidence that you're not gonna pound them when they do it wrong, right? You got to create an environment where it's okay to know what your limit is. And the only way to know what your limit is to do it. Was I successful or was I not? And then make corrections off of that. And then you start getting into the teaching parts of the game. And I think that's what I appreciate most here at Tulane is the teaching aspect of the game. We'll never have a problem with slowing things down or even stopping it for a second and say, do you understand why you can't go first to third there? Do you understand what happens if you don't go first to third? And now you're creating an environment for the runners to where, like, they want that extra bag. They're looking for opportunities to take that extra bag, whether it's first to third, a dirt ball, stolen base. They're dying for that extra 90. And knowing that it's low risk, really high reward if you're processing the info at a high rate and playing the game aggressively, if you're attacking the game and not waiting for something to come to you.
We mentioned a couple times winning in multiple ways. How important is base running to that equation of, let's say you just roll out to the park. It's a cold, gloomy day, the wind's blowing in, and you have to win in different ways. How does base running fit into that?
Yeah, I think if nothing else, it creates the priority on the defense to say they're probably going to run a lot, and they're constantly looking around. They're playing a little more tense. Maybe the reaction times are a little slower. If nothing else, it creates extra things to think about where they're not just sitting there in between pitches and waiting for the next thing to happen. But kind of like what I mentioned, base running shows up so much on Friday nights. I can't count the number of times on a Friday night you roll out with their number one guy who can get a ton of swing and miss, and you might have to capitalize on 6 or 7 runners the entire night, right? Free passes, hits, everything combined. So how can I maximize those 6 or 7 runners? Well, I'm going to have to do some creative things, and if they give me anything, I have to be able to take that. Like we talk about all the time, you know, you may work for that stolen base. There's 200 pitches in a game, right? You may only get 2 opportunities all game. So you think about it, like 198 times I'm waiting for that bag. I only get 2 opportunities. I can't miss those 2, especially on a Friday night when he's rolling out his best stuff, or on a bad weather day. You can't miss those opportunities. So if they're constantly hungry and looking for it, now you just equalize the field when most teams are not playing the game that way, and you get to take advantage of that.
Coach Hodge, thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate you guys.
Of course.